Along the dazzling shores of northern Michigan, almost 4 million tart cherry trees pepper the landscape, brimming with billions of cherries. But this tangy staple of the Mitten State has had a few challenging seasons. So as Michigan goes through a microbrew boom, a hardier crop is hopping in. The food forecast for Traverse City, Michigan starts right now. The rolling hills of northern Michigan are just taking on the perfect shade of red. The mesmerizing dance of the cherry harvest in Traverse City is in full swing. It's the tart cherry hub of the nation.
I would say we have 32,000 acres of tart cherries, and we have about 7,500 acres of sweet cherries in the state of Michigan, which those stats put us at the #1 tart cherry producer in the whole country.
Surrounding the subtle topography and sandy soils, glimmering Lake Michigan, the key ingredient in what makes this land perfect for growing the tart cherry.
You know, we're pretty far north. That's the thing. People when you look at it, we're at the 45th parallel, and they're like, how do you grow things like wine grapes or cherries? And it's because we have Lake Michigan that moderates our climate.
So let me explain that a little more. Lake Michigan actually acts like a blanket of sorts. In the spring, what happens is air blows over that relatively warmer lake, and then it'll protect it with cloud cover, wind, or just relatively warmer air in general.
I've been growing cherries since 1980.
Okay.
But I've been working with cherries all my life.
Your whole life?
Yep.
You're a cherry lifer.
I'm a cherry lifer.
Jim Nugent owns Sunblossom Orchards, including a relatively small 30-acre tart cherry farm. This year, he'll get about 500,000 pounds.
The trees that we were shaking right here are probably in the neighborhood of 150 to 225 pounds per tree.
From the tree to the chillers, pitters, then ready for pie, jam, or anything.
Dried, I have them on my cereal.
Yeah.
I put them on salads. They're awesome on salads. So I eat a
lot
lot
of
of
things you could do with
cherries.
cherries.
Yeah.
While this season is looking promising, the past decade has not been without major risk for cherry farmers.
Yeah, it's a very fragile crop. It's very susceptible to wind damage, it's susceptible to frost. It's not the easiest crop to grow. It's just that now our average bloom time is about advanced about 7 days in my career.
And that isn't just by Jim's memory, it's fact.
Without question, the overwhelming trend is that development is occurring earlier in the year, and the growing season is longer now than it was just a few decades ago.
Jeff Andresen is a climatologist with Michigan State University. They have a lab and their own farm in Traverse City. In a recent study, they found the date of the start of cherry season advancing by 7 to even 10 days since 1901. An earlier season isn't necessarily an issue unless it comes with extremes.
This is a 365 days, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day job to produce this crop year after year, and then you have a 15-minute hailstorm that can cause all sorts of problems. That's just one of those things. It's a part of farming and agriculture, and people have accepted the risk, but it hasn't made it any easier over time.
That risk, the sensitivity and vulnerability is what drove Brian Tennis away from cherries and into hops.
We started with organic sweet cherries, and that was just a mess because you could do everything right with sweet cherries or cherries in general, and something would happen right before harvest, like you get too much rain, all your cherries crack, or you get some type of disease in it and you're wrecked. Or you have a late frost where hops are, I mean, these guys are rock stars. It could snow tomorrow and they'd be fine.
Yeah. Hops, like the plant that they put inside beer. I'll admit it, I don't know a ton about beer, and I'd never been in a hops field, but get this, Michigan used to actually be one of the top hop spots.
Yep. Michigan, New York, and Wisconsin, 100 years ago, that's where hops were grown.
An infestation of mildew came through, taking out the 19th century's hops in Michigan. But now, they're back. Each vine climbing 20 feet in just 2 months.
On a good hot day, they'll grow, 6 to 10, sometimes 12 inches a day.
Elegantly spiraling counterclockwise up the coconut rope, regenerating every year.
We planted some of the first commercial acreage in Michigan in over a century, and that was we started with 1 acre, and now there's over 1,000 acres in the state.
Yeah.
And that now puts us top 4 in the nation and top 10 in the world in growing hops, and that's just within a decade.
So what Brian couldn't have known is that Michigan was about to have a beer boom. That's right, after he took a chance on hops, now there are more than 200 microbreweries in the state, 100 brew pubs, and a hops renaissance.
So this just finished boiling, and we went through the whirlpool process where it separates out the solids.
John Stewart is one of the folks buying those Michigan hops. He's the director of brewing operations at Perrin Brewing Company in Comstock Park.
So here we have the whole leaf dried hop, so you can actually see kind of what like the cones we were looking out there, but they've removed the moisture to make it a little bit more stable.
They use at least 10% Michigan hops, and he believes that that number is about to increase for everyone.
There's a lot of farmers that are taking and putting hops in. They grow well in the area up in Traverse City. There's a little bit, I think, more hardy of a crop that are going in. There's a huge demand for local Michigan hops.
So while John's going to be buying, Brian is racing to produce.
And I saw you have a bunch ready to go. Is that for the next season?
Yeah, we just finished that last Friday. That's an expansion. We'll be planting in the next 2 or 3 weeks or so. When we had this first acre, we thought, we really thought we were hot because, like, what are we going to do with all these hops?
Yeah.
And now there's like 1,000 times this in the state.
Right.
It's pretty remarkable where the
And the
industry
demand
has
is
gone.
there, and that's the thing, is that
Yeah,
you're going to have
absolutely.
people that are wanting Michigan hops.
As big as beer might get, the Michigan cherry isn't going anywhere.
Speaking, kind of realistically, with boots on the ground, we still have 32,000 acres of cherries, and we have roughly probably 700 acres of hops. So we still have a ways to go in the hops industry.
We still are in a pretty good area for growing fruit. Lake Michigan is still there, and that is the big influence on our climate that allows us to grow the cherries. I think it's going to be more challenging. I mean, we just are seeing that as we bloom earlier. So what the future 50 years from now will hold, I don't know. But I know we've got a lot of people working really hard to help us adjust to those changes.
At Perrin, they're taking advantage of the bounty that Michigan has to offer, marrying the two with a tart cherry beer. But for any of those cherry farmers considering diversifying with hops, a warning.
Is a beard necessary to be in the beer industry?
It's kind of like a skinny chef thing. I don't know if I'd trust a brewer that was completely clean shaved.
Do you think that anyone having to do with beer has to have a beard?
I think it's one of the qualifications.
Yeah.
Even ladies.
Yeah.
This is the food forecast for Traverse City, Michigan.
In the Great Lakes region, the harvest starts in southern production areas, but it's you plant and then it's reused, I think. I'm not positive about this, but I think we use sweets. It's pretty good. Should go professional. Got too much white coming in.
Yeah?
But it's the Malta. Those are a little sweeter.